What I wanted to get into very kind of briefly is what a design thinking methodology or the method itself is. And we're going to be looking at some of our design thinking masterclass slides, and I don't want to bore you too much with it, but when it comes to design thinking, it's basically I'm going to go full screen here. Full screen, there you go. There you go, put it in the middle. And what design thinking actually is it's basically, some people call it a mindset, some people call it a process of creatively solving some issues within a business, service, or a product, and some people call it a methodology. So depending on, you know, how you look at this whole thing, to me, it's pretty much a common sense, a methodology. Hello, Radek, how's it going, man? Join up and kind of sign up to the Zoom call, man. You've got the link right there. I'm looking forward to seeing you here. And the design thinking methodology, mindset, process, whatever you want to call it, to me, it's more of a common sense. There's nothing more common than, you know, kind of solving issues with a mindset or with the approach of validating before you implement. That's how I would summarize the entire process. We want to validate whatever we put out there as, you know, service providers, product creators. We want to make sure that we validate with whoever is supposed to be using our products and services, that it actually makes sense to them, that it's usable, that it's desirable for them, and that it actually makes sense and kind of delivers value. So that's what this entire process and the entire method is built around. It puts the customer in the middle of the process, and it starts and ends with the kind of business or the service provider. So when it comes to business hypothesis, let me see if this is going to work. I'm going to take maybe a bluish color. We're using the mouse itself. Take the brush tool, and hopefully it'll work. Yes, it's an ugly circle, but it is a circle nonetheless. So it all starts with business hypothesis. So we hypothesize around what we should do as a business. You know, what kind of service should we be providing, or what should be improved in our business to get more customers or any other business outcome. I don't want to get into too much of that. So we define a hypothesis. We validate it very early on with our customer base, who we define, obviously. And on that basis, once we talk to some of those customers, we define challenges, something that they face on a daily basis. So some of the elements that they find difficult to understand, or, you know, there's a service that doesn't work within our providings, and they just want to understand it better, or basically solve some issues, or they have some unfulfilled needs. And that's where we define that. Once we have understood what the needs or the problems are, then we can start to ideate. So basically generate as many exciting solutions to that specific design challenge or the problem that we've defined, as basically to make it as tangible and as realistic and as, you know, as big of an impact as possible. And then once we've generated 300-400 ideas with methods that we're going to be using today, like the one we're going to be using today, Lotus Blossom, you can generate north of 300-400 ideas in one session. So we need to prioritize them, which we will do today, and then prototype the best ideas that we've generated. And on that basis, test them out with the real human beings. So we kind of come back to the customer again and basically recruit some people, test out the prototype, see if it works. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't work, kill it or improve it, right? So that's where we test our prototypes, and then we move on to the last stage of the design thinking process as we outline it, and that's the impact delivery. That's where we actually take the tested prototype and we make sure that it's actually tangible in the market, that the business is ready to implement it, that they have the know-how, the knowledge, the expertise, the people, the processes, the tools, the technology, all of those fancy words that they have to actually implement that solution into the market. And that pretty much is the gist of the entire design thinking process. And there's a multiple, a magnitude of tools in each one of those steps. And today I wanted to show you one of those exciting tools, and that's, I'm going to use a white color over here. That's on this. Let me just use the white one. That's on this step of the process. So we're going to be ideating today. We're going to be generating some cool solutions. We're going to be doing that together. I'm going to share a link to a Mural app. You'll be able to actually, without any logging in, I think, you'll be able to get onto the Mural and kind of do some work with us. So we're going to be doing an ideation tool called, and hopefully I'll be able to do that, and it's Lotus Blossom. And I'm sure that it's all in black, or is it? Or it's actually pretty bloody small. That's the reason. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today. Guys, Any questions by the show of hands? Is that understandable somewhat? All right, cool. That's awesome. Okay, so moving on. I don't want to bore you with the process. Let's just dig right into the thing. So we have two canvases, which at the end of this call, I'll be sharing with the audience. So if you want to use those, they're free for you to use on whatever project you're working on currently. And I'm going to do a share, and hopefully this will work. Anonymous link. As you can see, we have places for 64 ideas, and I would like to kind of challenge ourselves today so we can generate 64 ideas today. And I've prepared one problem statement. But before we get to actually working with the tool, I'll explain the mechanics. So the way that Lotus Blossom actually works is a pretty exciting method, and it starts in the very middle. So I have the problem statement over here, and I'm sure that you've faced this enough times to understand what the problem statement actually is. But the problem statement is built as a how might we kind of aspect. And it's how might we increase the productivity of our online meetings, such as this one, such as any meeting we do whenever we are kind of working together remotely with the teams, with other designers, with other people, with our clients, with our service providers. How might we make those meetings more productive and more relevant to whatever we're doing? So that's the problem statement, and that's before we start generating. That's how the whole method starts. So we put the problem statement in the middle, and then we generate as a first step into this whole thing. As a group of people trying to solve this issue, we generate 8 ideas, and there's one specific concept which I've mentioned in our newsletters we've sent out and some of the communication, that when it comes to generating ideas, it's a 3-step process. The first one is to have a good understanding of the problem. So for today, I've picked up the problem that we all kind of faced sooner or later, or to some extent within our paths. So I'm sure that we can kind of understand what we mean when it comes to productivity of an online meeting. And that's the first step, to have a good understanding of what we're actually trying to solve as a problem, what that problem statement's, what's underneath it. And the second step is generating ideas. So that's this exciting method. And there's one main assumption that we need to actually make it flow as best as it can be, or as it can do. And that's put our kind of get ourselves into this mode of kind of waking up that inner child, basically, so that we, my daughter is 5 years old, my son's 2.5, and they do a lot of drawing. Yeah, they kind of draw stuff on well, they draw on everything, which is a pain in the butt to some extent. But when they draw on actually like a piece of paper, when they're kind of managing it, they draw cats and dogs and houses and cars, etc. And and they don't judge that work in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, I don't either. I'm like, oh, what a beautiful cat this is, darling, and all of those, because I want to encourage them to actually, immerse themselves into this creativity thing. And it works because I don't judge them. They don't know that the world is out there, and sooner or later they will get, a degree or whatever assessment that they will face, some competition in the future, and all that dread that we know about. And that's the mindset that we want to try and put ourselves into when we're ideating. We don't want to criticize any of the ideas. All we want to do is generate as many as possible. And that's the crucial element of the second phase. So first you understand the problem, then you generate with this mindset of whatever. I don't care how much it's going to cost me. I'm going to put a Rudolph reindeer idea over here, and it's going to work. Santa Claus, whatever. We just want to make sure that we let go, because this is the second step of the ideation stage. And the third one is that's where we actually start to criticize, put our grown-up hat on, and that's where we start to get to the right-hand side and prioritize some of those ideas in the context of some elements. And we'll get into that in the second part of this webinar. But for now, I think that you're all on the actual mural. So all we need to do is come up with 8 ideas. Let's give ourselves as much time as we need to generate the initial 8 ideas for the how might me. And the way you do it, you click. I think if I click on the canvas, it's actually going to open it up for some reason. I don't know why. So I need to click off the canvas. And if you double click, it's going to generate a little post-it note. And all we need to do is just type in whatever idea we have. How might we increase the productivity of an online meeting? I'm going to write down have an agenda. Right? And that's one thing that I would improve if I would have an online meeting. I would have an agenda of that meeting so that everybody knows what we're actually talking about, right? So that's that. And I just stick it over there, and that's me. That's my idea, right? So guys, fire away, generate, just take your one spot and generate an idea to how might we increase the productivity of an online meeting. So I'll give you, 60 seconds. It's going to probably take less time than we need to. So just fire away, type it in, and then we'll go further. Everything understandable so far? Is that kind of manageable? All right, cool. So just fire away. All right, cool. Right? All right, so we've generated 8 ideas already. So we can have something to prepare before. So we ask people to actually do some preparation work before the actual meeting. Then we have summarized the meeting outcome, have an agenda, start in a good mood, invite only important people, have an alarm clock, define the goal of the meeting, and exchange. We can exchange ideas openly, right? So we want to get into this mindset of no criticism on the meeting, and that will make them productive. And that's the first stage of the ideation of the Lotus Blossom tool. So we've generated 8 ideas already, right? And now the way that this tool works, it's we take each one of those ideas, and I'm going to ask you for your help as well. So each one of the initial ideas, and as you can see, there's there are these gray arrows that we take the idea and we just move it to this cell that it corresponds with. So just help me out. That's great. Teamwork. Yay. That's awesome. All right. And now what we do, again, we tackle each one of those ideas separately. And all we need to do, let's go to the top left-hand side corner. So we have this, we can have something to prepare before. And now we generate 8 ideas on the basis of this one. So when it comes to generating or having something to be prepared before, what do you actually mean? Is that, I would say, let's say, an Excel spreadsheet with the meeting outcome. I'm not judging. I know that it's been before, maybe some of it. I'm just trying to generate. So I'm just getting into the mindset. Okay, I'm going to have an Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to prepare beforehand, or I'm going to have an Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to send out to people. Send out an XLS form for people to know what the meeting will be about. So that's how I use this one idea about having something to prepare before. So I'm thinking about formats. Am I going to be doing that over email, over radio, TV, Zoom? Am I going to be doing that, through Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets, and all of those crazy ideas that allow us to actually get this thing done? There's going to be another idea that I would say, okay, let's have an kind of a specific 5-minute kind of time frame or time slot at the end to summarize whatever we've whatever we've decided or kind of decided upon. I'm sure that you've been to many meetings where we're sitting down, where the meeting kind of rolls over the hour, and then it's like 10 minutes past, and you're like, everybody's looking at the watch because they have another meeting to go to, and we're still discussing. We still haven't decided what we want to do or what is the outcome. So that would be something we could increase the productivity of a specific meeting if we just did that, kind of have a 5 minutes at the end. So the meeting doesn't really take up an hour. It takes 55 minutes because the 5 last minutes are there to help us out and make sure that we actually, come up with a summary of that meeting specifically. So we have that, we have an agenda. So there's somebody generating an idea over there. And this is basically the gist of this whole exercise. So it takes pretty much, we're like maybe 10 minutes in, and we've already generated probably like, I would say maybe 10 or 12 ideas. And when you sit down with a group of people as creative as you guys, it takes no time to use each one of those ideas initially generated and then generate 8 additional ideas on top of that little one through thinking about the how, the why, the what ifs about that specific element. So have an agenda is that written down in on a sheet of paper like this one, or is it an Excel spreadsheet? Is it PDF? Is it emailed before, etc.? Is it being printed off on an A0 format sheet of paper and put on the wall? There's so many different things that we can mean and additionally generate an additional idea when it comes to having an agenda of the meeting. So all of these elements are very relevant, and they really quickly get us to the end of generating very, very many ideas for this specific thing. Is that kind of understandable, guys, as far as the methodology is concerned? Any questions related to the method, how it works? I'm going to stare at the chat. Rafael, Bartosz, that's cool. All right, awesome. All right, Chris, that's awesome. Fantastic. Cool. So now we have, okay, everybody on the chat. I'm still staring at the chat a little bit, just to give a little bit. I'm going to be staring at the chat from time to time, just to see if there are any questions that pop up. And if not, we can just move on. So this is the exercise. This is the gist of this whole thing. It's pretty easy, it's pretty fast, and it's pretty impactful. You generate 64 ideas within about half an hour when you get into this. So that's that. And that's where we take off our child's hat, or our inner child goes to sleep, and that's where we get into the criticism of this whole thing. And all we need to do then is go to our second canvas. And if I could ask you guys to take all of the ideas we've generated and just move them with me to the other canvas, to the idea prioritization. So just drag them over to wherever, not into the fields themselves, just anywhere. And we can then, you can take the middle, you can take the outer one where we've generated something additionally when we haven't. It's just an exercise of how to do that, all right? The problem can stay where it was, because right now we're not thinking about the problem anymore. All we're thinking about is the ideas we've generated. So as you can see, there's probably like 20 ideas out here already. Some of them are more generic, some of them are more unique, etc. But they all should work. And this is the third stage of the ideation process, and this is how we identify the best ideas. So we prioritize those ideas. And from my experience, looking at many different methods and being part of these brainstorming sessions, I'm sure you've been one of part of some of those. Let's generate some ideas, brainstorm some of those ideas, and then put them together into a list and start implementing. But to me, it's really important to actually prioritize some of those ideas and have a good method for that prioritization. And there's a very cool method that we use for prioritizing pretty much anything. And that's, as you can see, there are two axes of prioritization. For this specific one, we've used the first axis, taking any one of those ideas. The first axis of prioritization is the customer experience. So if our customer is let's imagine a project manager in a big enterprise, and they would like to increase the productivity of the meetings that they organize, we would like to provide them with a solution to that problem that increases the experience of them having that meeting, of solving their problem, basically. So the closer we are to the right, the more we solve the problem through this specific idea, right? So this is the first axis of prioritization. And when we do that, then we go to the second axis of prioritization, and that's the delivery ease. So once we've identified the best ideas from the perspective of the customer experience or recipient's experience, we want to make sure that they are as easy to implement as possible. And that's obviously open to discussion. Some of the ideas are so simple that they don't deliver on the value really. So therefore, it's hard to implement something that doesn't really generate that much. Hello, Trishul. Great to see you, man. So cool to see you join. So that's one axis. And then the second axis is the delivery ease. So how easy is it to implement that idea? So the way to do it, there's one cool method, and it works for any prioritization ever. Some people try to put, high impact, middle impact, low impact. To me, any scale doesn't matter. All I need to do is take any one of those ideas. So let's just say, reading connected with the subject matter, right? So that was for the preparation of the meeting. And what I need to do is basically put that one idea anywhere on that axis, and that idea alone generates the entire axis scale, because I take any subsequent idea is going to be either more relevant to the customer experience, or less relevant to the customer experience. So any other one I take is going to be either less or more impactful on the customer experience. And that's what I need to do. I'm just going to kind of paste in the mural. Trishul, we're actually on the mural app. There's a link in the chat, so if you want to join us, click the link and you'll be able to see where we are. We've generated 20-something ideas and now we're prioritizing them. So definitely pitch in and help us out with the prioritization as well. So the way we do this, we've put one idea anywhere on the axis, and that creates the scale. Because any subsequent idea I take, let's say, let's get exchange idea. We can exchange ideas openly to increase the productivity of that specific meeting. And now it's a judgment call and a group discussion, which I wouldn't like to be too long. So every time I run a workshop like that, I open it up to voting. So that's what I would do now. And I'm going to open up a voting exercise in between those two ideas. Which one do you think is going to be better for the productivity aspect of the meeting, and which is going to be on the other end of the scale? Just those two. Which one is better? And I'm going to start a voting session, and I'm going to give everyone one vote, and we're going to go. So you can just click on any one of those post-it notes, and that vote will be kind of accumulated in the system. So off you go. Just click on any one of those post-it notes. So there's 7 of us voting. I'm still waiting for some of you to vote. So if you click on any one of those post-it notes, you can basically give a vote to which idea you think is going to be better for the improving of that. So okay, I'm going to end the voting session. There you go. Let's see what happens. So we can exchange ideas openly. Received 2 votes. So this is the winning element. So we would move that we can exchange ideas openly to the right-hand side of this one because it's more impactful according to the group decision, right? So then we take another one, and we take, let's imagine this one. Everyone should be responsible for something. And now again, it's a judgment call. You know, is that everyone should be responsible for something more impactful than this one or less impactful than that one? And we do another voting session. When you're not doing it remotely, it's a little bit easier to kind of maintain that state. But when you're doing it remotely, there is a mural app there to help you. So it's always in between the 2 or the 3 different ideas. So I'm going to put that one over here. And again, I'm going to start the voting session, and we will just be judging these 3 ideas. So everyone should be responsible for something, reading connected with subject, and we can exchange ideas openly. So just vote on these 3 ideas. Which one of those do you think is the best when it comes to the customer experience? And just put your vote over there. And this time I'm going to give you two kind of votes per person. Off you go. So which one is the best? I'm still going to go with this one, and I'm going to go with this one. So just giving you a few seconds. So just vote on the 3 ideas that are actually on the canvas. So that everyone should be responsible for something, reading connected with the subject, and we exchange ideas openly. So I'm still waiting. Okay, so we have the sea lion still to be to vote, and the ladybug still to vote, and the seahorse hasn't left any votes yet. Well, 1 vote. So the seahorse, we need another vote from you, and the ladybug and the sea lion, whoever you are, definitely. Okay, thank you very much, seahorse. And we have 2 additional ones. So okay, I'm going to end the voting session and see what the results are. So we can exchange ideas openly. That's again the best voted one. And then we have 2 and 2. So we would need to do another voting session for that. But you get the gist of the exercise. So we make sure that we put another idea on, and then we give the kind of the participants of the workshops online 3. There's always 1 less vote than there are ideas on the actual axis, right? So this is what worked for us in the past, and it does require a little bit of a kind of playing around with the idea, but it definitely corresponds with doing this remotely without any kind of interaction physically with the person on the other side. And obviously you're all muted, so we would have a group discussion about all of those ideas if we were kind of doing it in a more workshop sense way. And this is pretty much the exercise. So we go through each one of those ideas, we move stuff around, and we're like, okay, this is a little bit better, this is a bit less, this is a little bit less. So we move stuff around just to make sure that one axis related to the customer experience actually works, right? So each one of those ideas is either more impactful or less impactful than the other one, and that's what creates the axis of the customer experience. And that's step number one into this idea prioritization. And then once we're done with all of the ideas, we've got like 7 of them here, and the rest obviously needs to be put on the canvas itself. But once we're done with that, then we go and we start moving those ideas down. The further down we are, the easier the idea is to implement. So we go with each one of those ideas, and we're again taking each one of those, and we're thinking, okay, so which one, let's imagine the summarizer of the meeting outcome versus we exchange the ideas openly. We kind of vote on those two in reference of the second scale, and that's how easy is it to actually implement that idea into the organization, for example, or for the project manager to actually work with, right? So that's pretty much the gist. So all we need to do is just slide that idea down, and let's just imagine that would look something like this. And there's one thing to remember over here, that no one idea can be equal to the other. So they should always have some sort of a differentiation on both of the axes. So they cannot be on the same level of customer experience, and they cannot be on the same level of the delivery ease. And that what adds this additional element of making sure that we pick the best ideas from the perspective of the customer experience and the easiest ones to implement. And once we're done with that, I'm going to open up another cool tool in the Mural app. And the way that it works is, once we've prioritized those ideas, we can then pick the best ones. And I usually go with whatever ends up at the very lowest part, like these ones. So they have the biggest impact on the customer experience, and they're the cheapest to do. So that's like number 1 for me, right? So that's the first segment of the ideas that I'm going to take and implement as soon as possible. The second one, I'm going to use a different color, maybe let's go with a pinkish, or maybe not, because the canvas is pink. I'm going to go with a turquoise color. And that's, again, everything to me, the ones that I choose are, again, very impactful on the customer experience, but a little bit more costly to actually implement. So that's number 2. Then number 3 is everything that is less impactful on the customer experience, but still very cheap to do. So I'm trying to add those into the mix, right? So this is like number 3 for me. And then number 5 is my favorite section. Let's just go with green, because it all goes into the green field, if you like. It goes into the bin. All of those ideas go straight into the bin. Nobody's going to worry about them because they're too expensive to implement, and they have little impact on the customer experience, right? So all of those ideas go straight to the bin. I'm going to draw a little bin over here, and all of those ideas are right there in the middle. So that's that, and I'm done drawing. And that's the prioritization exercise. So to wrap it up, customer experience first, each idea is relative to the other, so there are no 2 equal ideas. Then we go to the second axis for the delivery ease. What's easiest to implement, we implement, or what's easiest to implement goes down. What's harder to implement stays up or goes even further up. And then we're done with the exercise. And then we just pick the cheapest and the biggest impact ideas. Second ones I would pick are the ones that have big impact and are a little bit more costly. The third one is less cost, less impact, and the fourth one goes to the bin because it's, you know, too much cash and it has no impact. So that's the exercise as a whole. So guys, is that understandable? All right, cool. I'm staring at the chat. Maciej has asked, this is really cool, Andy. Thanks very much. I'm really glad that you say that. That's really humbling, and I'm really glad. Can I move use prioritization with other idea? I mean, idea with 2 votes could have the same priority in other idea session. Yeah, I think that if you get into this stage where you have, like we did, you know, we had 2 ideas with the same amount of votes, then again, it would be going down to getting back to these two ideas and just voting on those and just giving people one vote, right? So if we have this kind of element where we are struggling to define the importance of each one of those ideas, all we need to do is, have that voting session just on those two ideas alone, and that fixes the problem. I know that it takes a little bit longer because of the discussion online, etc. But at the end of the day, if we were we had all the microphones unmuted, and we could have a group discussion, we can do it. I'm not muting you guys, just unmute if you want, and we can definitely have that discussion openly, and then discuss each one of those ideas, and then make a group decision on the audio or have another voting session. So that's how I would approach this whole matter. So that's that. Is that understandable, Maciej? All right, awesome.